Ladies and gentlemen, this second plenary session, Breaking Barriers, Policies and Innovations for Inclusive Economies. An economy thrives when everyone has a seat at the table, but what does it take to create truly inclusive economies where people of all abilities, background, and circumstances can contribute and succeed? Today, we will explore the policies and innovations that are breaking down barriers and opening up opportunities for all. Please join me in welcoming our panelist speakers and moderator to the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, now I have the pleasure of introducing our moderator for today's session, Ms. Tashni Sukumaran, Human Rights Consultant. Tashni Sukumaran is an analyst and researcher with 15 years of experience covering labor, migration, and public policy. She holds a postgraduate degree in human rights law from the School of Oriental and African Studies in London. She has contributed to projects with ISIS Malaysia and World Bank and UK PAC. Stage is yours, Ms. Tashni.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon. Yes, to everyone. Let me just introduce our speakers really quickly. So we have Ms. Babati Krishnan. She is an active PWD advocate, and she's been at it for 46 years. Is that right? 46 years you've been doing this? Yes. She's currently president of the Association of Women with Disabilities in Malaysia, and she was previously a senator from 2013 to 2019. Hasby Mas Putra Abu Bakar, who I will refer to as Hasby. He's the founder of Suman, a collection of lived experience advocates pushing for inclusive governance. He most recently represented Suman in Geneva as a stakeholder in Malaysia's UPR, where he presented a report on the state of disability rights. And Mr. Adli Yaya, he ended a corporate career in banking to start the Autism Cafe project, which is a safe space for individuals with autism, and it trains youth on life skills and empowers them to hopefully earn an income. Great, so with that, maybe we can go to everyone's opening remarks. Would you like to start? Would that be all right?
Opening remarks about? Yeah.
Well, I'd really like to hear your thoughts on policies and innovations for inclusive economy, maybe on upskilling and sort of socialization to enter the workforce seamlessly, and maybe some comments on longevity. What are the barriers to access for holistic and healthy employment?
True. Thank you very much. Yes, I think employment of persons with disabilities has been a big issue since 1988. Where the government introduced a policy whereby 1% of the jobs should be allocated, should be offered to persons with disabilities in the private sector and 1% in the public sector as well. So therefore, from then until now, that 1% has not been fulfilled yet. And why? We know all the barriers, there's so many challenges. So until now, we are still trying to get near that 1%. The government service, in the public service, so far only 0.3% has been achieved. It's very sad. And in the private sector, there is no central database. There may be, in reality, more people who are in the workforce, employed, as well as self-employed. They may be entrepreneurs as well who do work and contribute to the to nation building as well. So therefore, there are a lot of gaps still, existing, whereby there is no central database where everybody, the work, the number of people who are employed is not shown accurately. So this is what we need to address. And there is also a National Employment Council where we do not have a person with disability represented there. If somebody is there, at least they can help to monitor, they can help to push the government and the private sector to make sure that they fulfill this 1%. Yeah, that's all I can say as an introduction.
Thank you so much. Hasby, would you like to go next? Cool.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm going to stand.
So he's got slides. So you guys are very lucky.
I'm sorry, I'm over-prepared. And I also have notes because my memory is not really that good anymore. So I'm here to talk about policies and innovations for inclusive economies. This is a very brief Tioman teach-in. First off, I'd like to thank the Malaysian Institute of Management for reaching out and to us for actually supporting that. It's really hard to get platform as a disabled advocate, especially within these settings. So I'm going to start really, really quickly. Policies and innovations for inclusive economies. Wait, wrong. Hi, my name is Hasby. I have bipolar disorder. I am neurodivergent with ADHD, and I have profound hearing loss. Therefore, I wear 2 hearing aids, left and right. I have 3 minutes to talk about disability, and hopefully together we can come up with policies and innovations for inclusive economies in the Q&A later. Before I continue, I'd like to get an idea of who I'm speaking to. I want to get to know who's in the audience, so I have a couple of questions. 3, not a couple, 3 questions. And a show of hands, please. First question is, how many disabled people are in this room? How many are disabled? Okay, quite a good representation. Now, next question. How many here have disabled friends? Disabled friends. Last question. How many here have disabled employees or colleagues in the office? Thank you very much. For those with invisible or hidden disabilities, if you raise your hand, thank you very much for sharing your status with us. And for those with invisible disabilities who are not comfortable, I get it. I completely understand. So we've been talking quite a bit about disability today, which is good, which is really, really good. But I'd like to recenter the discussion and make sure everyone understands what we mean when we say disability. Say hello to the social model of disability. This is how we frame disability within our legal system. This is a very, I want to say, not reductive, but very simplified explanation of what disability is. Disability results from the interaction between individuals with a health condition with personal and environmental factors, including negative attitudes, inaccessible transportation and public buildings, and limited social support. Everything that the panel has been discussing before this, lack of access, this is the definition for that. Now, the social model focuses on the accessibility and exclusion as barriers. So it suggests the following. Disability is the result of how society is organized. Persons with disabilities face bias and barriers that prevent our equal participation. Disability is not a problem of the individual, and it mainly lies in the social environment that can be limiting or empowering, depending on many factors. Persons with the social model also suggests that persons with disabilities can and should participate in society. Now, why is the social model important? How we conceptualize disability influences how we interact with it. It removes the burden of stigma and related baggage from the individual. It is fundamental to a human rights-based approach, and it is, I would argue, is fundamental to living a dignified life. Very often, the questions that we ask determine our answers. How we ask the questions shapes the answers that we get. Now, looking at disability through a social lens presents opportunities to remove barriers and increase accessibility for all. If we design environments and services and processes to be inclusive of disabled persons, they will be inclusive of everyone. What is disability? And how do we enable disabled persons? Disability is the outcome of how society is arranged. Disability is exclusion, stigma, discrimination. Disability is being denied a job, an education, or entry into a building. Disability is exclusion from social, political, economic, cultural, and technological participation from what shapes how power and resources are distributed and organized across society. So based on the social model, based on the social model of disability, what policies and innovations do we need for inclusive economies? How do we break the inaccessibility cycle? What do we need to do? What do we need to do to see more raised hands in more rooms like this? That is the question. And I would suggest protection from discrimination, equal opportunity, and access. These are the three things. These are not innovations. They have been with us for a very long time. So thank you very much. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you so much, Hasby. Adli, would you like to take for next?
I would have to agree with Ms. Padma. Okay. I have a son, which is, he's in the autism spectrum as well. He's 26. You know, I've been looking at the 1% punya thingy for quite some time already. It's a policy there. But I don't think it is effective at all in terms of the implementation. And what more to my son to basically to work in a real world case where he have an issue in terms of his physical ability, he has an issue with his intellectual ability, and he is 90% nonverbal. Put that into 1%, would he be able to work? With the current scenario, there's a policy of 1%, but it's not implemented as it should be. It's there, but it's like, you can do or you can't. If you don't want to, it's okay. There's no implication if you don't live up to that 1% quota. You know. So I got fed up with that. I decided this is not how it should be, but I can't keep quiet. So what I did was I took things in my hand. Policy, be it policy, I'm sure in times it will improve. I hope so. But rather than waiting for the policy to be changed, I decided to take things in my hand, within my ability. So I set up a project called the Autism Cafe Project about 8 years back. And it focuses on the individual with autism who is less functional. You know, chances for them to work in the workforce, in the normal workforce, is very slim. As I told you, 1% implement policy doesn't work. So what's going to happen to him? So I set up this project, as I said, focus on those who are lesser functional. They'll grow up as you and I as well. So what's going to happen to him? When I'm around, I can take care of him. But one fine day, I'll go across the road, and what's going to happen to him? So this is my solution. As it says, I rather do this rather than wait for the policy to be changed. I hope policies will be changed soon, but I can't wait. Time doesn't wait for me, So I have to change, and I set up this project about 8 years back, focusing on low-functioning autism. And we are doing fine now. In fact, this is our second phase of the project, which we set up a boarding home for them. So it's no more cafe-oriented. It's actually a house for them to stay and work. So it has been established about three months back. And hopefully within the next 2 months, we could activate it properly. That's it.
So much
Thank
for
you.
sharing. Right, I'm going to throw all of you some questions, and I'll direct it to a specific person, but if anyone wants to interject, please feel free. At the same time, the floor will be open towards the end, and you can also put in some questions via Slido. Is that it? Yep, so I will look at those in about 20 minutes. Maybe I'd like to start with Padma. I would really like to know about some of the specific innovations that can be put into place to make a workplace more conducive to inclusivity. Maybe you could even draw from your own experience at a university and tell me what made things, day-to-day things, easier, more accessible for you? And what would you like to see actually entrenched in contemporary corporate culture if we are aiming for inclusivity?
Thank you. Well, I started work at the library way back in 1979, even before the Uniform Building Bylaws, the Amendment 34A, Section 34A, was introduced. And when I went to work at the University of Malaya Library, I went into the cataloging department and I made sure that they had ramps, not of this angle, but accessible ramp, 1:20 gentle ramp, and also to have the washrooms, because the library was willing enough to break up 2 stalls to make it wider, and with a door which I can close easily. It's a kind of, I don't know what you call it. Maybe some of the architects may know. So, and I managed to work for 25 years. And there, they were not used to having a disabled person working with them. So in the library, they only know about trolleys. So the colleagues there, they said, "Padma, please move your trolley over there." Talking about my wheelchair. They didn't even know it was called a wheelchair. So it was an educational, awareness for them as well, to have me as one of the staff. And our chief librarian, the late Mrs. Koo Siuman, was good enough to include me in all the programs as well. Like they have night duty, I can share my night duty with another person, because night duty person comes at 1 o'clock and they go back at 8 o'clock. So I can't be left alone from 5 to 8 on my own. So therefore I share the duty with that person. I do their first half. In my night duty day, they do my first half. So, and then I was also involved in the social activities, and even when the university organized a trip overseas, a trip for self-building, it's called NADI UM, and where we had to go to Slim River, an outskirt, where we don't have any phones, anything. So we were trained, and I was also included, me as well as another person, Naziati, who, they included us. So we felt valued also as staff of University of Malaya. So that's part of it. Anyway, when it comes to employing disabled persons, whether it is in a company, let me talk about the company first, private sector. In the private sector, the human resource policy, do they have an inclusion statement there, that they open up the jobs, they offer it to persons with disabilities? We notice that a lot of multinational companies in the country are able to offer, because they follow the rules in they are supposed to follow the rules as in their own country. So for our local companies, they're also reluctant because of the lack of awareness. What can disabled people do? You see, we have graduates coming out from the 20 public universities and so many private universities. A lot of graduates who are physically disabled, those who are deaf, and those who are autistic and blind as well. But are they given the appropriate jobs appropriate to their qualifications? No, they're not. Why? Because of the policy, and because nobody is looking into where can we place them. So this is all still ongoing. So we need to have a central a body to monitor the placement of how many are graduating. And we know that at least from primary school up to tertiary level, and the primary schools they finish until A levels, and then they go and have their tertiary education. So where are we going to place them? Right? So that needs to be resolved. And those who are not able, persons with disabilities who are not able to follow that line, right up to tertiary education, there are vocational schools also, for the deaf and for learning disabled persons as well. And they also have community colleges. Community colleges have got several courses, like culinary, bakery, a lot of, hairdressing, a lot of skills are taught. And after that, where do you place them? They can even apply for jobs in the public sector or in the private sector. And there are many of them are employed, sometimes in hotels as well. In hotels, some of them are employed in malls, as you know, a lot of us have seen them. And it doesn't mean that many people think that you need to have a job coach. If you take a person with disability, you need a job coach. Not all categories need job coach. Those who need job coach are those with learning disabilities and perhaps sometimes, those who are deaf also. So the job coach will be there liaising with the employer and to make sure that the disabled employee finds it comfortable working there. And once he's confident, then the job coach leaves and the person is on their own. So another area, challenges are transportation, accessibility. There are many people who find it difficult. Those with physical disability, how are they going to go in their wheelchair? Some have got motorized wheelchair, some have got manual wheelchair. How are they supposed to go from their house to the workplace? I mean, we've got supposed to have a seamless transportation, yeah? But the seamless transportation for persons with disabilities and for the elderly, it doesn't start from the house. It starts from the station. How do you get from the house to the station? So the gap is still there. And we all went through the COVID era. And I'm sorry to say, I feel very sad that we have lost so many lives and people have lost their jobs. But during the COVID era, there was something positive that happened, i.e., people were allowed to work from home. Even executives, even private sector, the civil service people were working from home. And we remember, those were the days when we offered and we told the government that, why don't you allow us to work from home? They just laughed, they found it funny. But the COVID era brought out a reality that we can work from home. And even now, the companies, they can have flexible hours. And even, I know, people working in Bursa, working in banks and all that, can work from home once a week. Yeah. So, the opportunities are there. It's opening up. So, I hope the Human Resource Department of the private sector, as well as the government, this Suruhanjaya Perkhidmatan Awam, where they take in government staff, open their eyes and make sure that they have a list of job seekers and the vacancies that are available and then place them. It is as simple as that. But attitude, the barriers that Hasby was mentioning, yeah, we've got a lot of barriers. And the worst barrier is not, physical barrier is one, but the worst barrier is attitudinal barrier. So we ought to break that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I would really love to hear your introduction. And then if you could just follow up with the question I want to ask you, which is actually about the legal reforms that could perhaps make some way towards addressing these barriers in place. Thank you.
Sure. I just want to pick up from what Batma said earlier about attitudinal barriers. And yeah, I do agree that this is one of the biggest barriers that we need to overcome. We can teach and transfer knowledge and values. Knowledge, basically, how do you make things accessible? So for ramps, for instance, the angle should be for every 1 inch of height, there should be 12 inches of travel before. So that allows for an optimal angle. The optimal angle is actually for every 1 inch of forward travel, it should be 20 inches of height. And this does not fit the specifications at all. But anyway, attitudinal barriers are really hard to change because they're ingrained, they're part of you. They become actually part of your identity. Our attitudes towards disabled persons is actually part of our identity. And I bring this up because there seems to be a overlap with how, I won't mince my words. So racism, ableism, misogyny have very common features, which is that we devalue a segment of the population based on their characteristics. We devalue and dehumanize a segment of the population because they're female or because they're not disabled, they're disabled. These are the commonalities in bigotry. We are devaluing a specific segment of the population because we don't think they are the same as we are. And while I understand where that is coming from, I think we as a human species should be able to overcome those kind of biases. And it's hard. It is hard to change some minds. But I think that's fundamental to how we want to become more accessible, because if we keep seeing other segments of the population not like us to be less deserving, what's to stop then other people viewing us the same way? Accessibility is actually pushing for accessibility is actually very, what's the word I'm looking for? It's very, pentingkan diri? What's the word for pentingkan diri? Yeah, it's very selfish. Accessibility is actually, pushing for accessibility is very selfish, because my well-being as a person and my prosperity in this society depends on the well-being of everyone in this room. If someone in this room is discriminated against and cannot live a dignified life, the chances of all our quality of lives going down, it increases. This is the importance of diversity and inclusion. Our well-being, our prosperity depends heavily on the well-being of the prosperity of people around us. And this is important, I think, to understand how we can shift attitudes. We can build ramps. We can build accessible schools. We can roll out accessible education. But we do not change our attitudes towards disabled persons and other persons who may not look like us, or feel like us, or worship like us, or believe like us. It's going to be a halfway thing. Right. So, again, sorry, I missed the question.
I was going to say, with regards to all these barriers that you have mentioned, how far would legal reform assist in this? And I mean, amendments to the PWD Act, or sort of just alignment with the CRPD. Would substantive legal reform actually play a strong role in breaking down these barriers?
Okay, no, this is important. Thank you very much for the question. What's actually stopping you from making someone your slave? Let's say I want to pick Tashni up. What's stopping me from making Tashni my slave? Is it the law? It's not. It's social norms. Social norms stop me, because it's not normal for someone to, hey, I want to make you my slave.
Also, you know, I'm not very good at cleaning.
Yeah. And the issue is that the law itself is a protection. But the law can also be used to change behavior, whether we incentivize. So we punish certain behaviors, therefore we disincentivize that behavior. But we don't disincentivize discrimination against disabled persons, do we? There are no legal redress mechanisms for disabled persons to seek legal protection from discrimination. Only recently, I want to say it was in January this year, an artistic counselor with KKM finally got the court to declare that persons with disabilities should be afforded discrimination protection. But that's from a constitutional perspective. There are still no there's still no legislation that explicitly protects discrimination. And you know what's the funny thing? No one is protected from discrimination. There are no laws in Malaysia that protect anyone from discrimination. So if you feel that you are being discriminated against, you have to go through a very lengthy court process to actually prove that discrimination. And it's made harder for persons with disabilities because just access to justice is not very accessible. So to answer Tashi's question very succinctly, there's a lot more to be done in terms of the law, but I don't think the law itself is the end game. It is useful for protection. It's useful to seek redress and also to regulate behavior and to specifics, what we need actually. The law, when I mentioned in my presentation, what do we need to actually enable disabled persons? We need access, we need equal opportunity, and we need protection from discrimination. These three things are not provided by any law in Malaysia for disabled persons. So this is the big gap. I could go on and explain this act and that act, but that doesn't really matter in this context. What matters is there are no protections, and actually disabled advocates pushing for that kind of protection are not getting traction with policymakers. And that's very disappointing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.
I'll go over to Mr. Adley and then I'll circle back to everyone. I would actually really like to hear more sort of on the back of policies and frameworks and how little or how much they can do. I'd like to hear a little bit more about your thoughts on the 1% quota for PWDs, how it's now become a KPI and how it's not been filled. And leading to that, since we're talking about, innovations in terms of breaking barriers, how much more of a role has corporate support played in the work that you do in trying to minimize this gap yourself?
Yeah, talking this unpleasant 1% punya thing, it's really unpleasant to me. There's so many things that we can do, while waiting for this policy to be revamped, whatnot, Yeah, since 88, can you imagine that? What I wanted this is actually in terms of giving them the opportunity to actually be at the same level as you and I, For a good example is when you hire people, normally they went for the interview. Us, we can translate our thoughts carefully, as clear as we can. But now we're talking about autism, yeah? But our boys, good example is our boys at the cafe. The lacking part, in general, is the communication issues. So bring that to the session where they have to be interviewed for the post. If they are competing with us, they are on the losing side. Pinpoint on the losing side because they can't communicate as us. They can't tell you what their ability is, what they can do, they can't. So the format of the interview, to me, if you put them in equation, they are already in the losing side because they can't speak for themselves. So I wish that this kind of interviews, could revamp it in more advanced manner to have their parents or to have their caretakers to be with them. So they can explain to them, hey, this guy can do this guy can do this, this guy can do this, So that puts them in equal basis with others. If not, they are on the losing side. I wish we could do that, And the other thing is this, the individuals here are basically, when they call you for an interview, there's a job description has been written. You have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this. But if you apply those to autistic individual, it'll be backfire. Because they can't perform as us. Us, we are given a task, like it or not, we have to do it. By all means, we have to do it, and we can do it, basically. But with them, you can't do that. You got to know their ability first. You got to know their liking first. Then you can offer a job for them. Because if you do that, it will be a win-win situation. But if you move towards the normal scenario that we have now, they are on the losing side. You hire them, there'll be issues. I give you a good example. This has happened to one of our boys at the cafe. He is very honest to the T, very honest. If it is black, it's black. It's not gray or not, it's black. So what happened is this, he was, without being consulted properly, without being addressed properly, he was being placed at the customer service area. Now, this boy, as I said, is very honest, and he says black is black and white is white. So what happened was he doesn't like this one particular brand of jam. And, placing at the customer service, he got customers coming in, asking this and that, And apparently there's so many customers asking him whether this jam that he doesn't like, is it good? So you know what is his answer? Please don't buy, this is not good. You're being he's being very honest. Facts is facts to him. He said, so the next 2 weeks, he was given a boot from the company. He was being fired because his honesty, and the people doesn't understand him. If you understand him first, knowing that he is honest person, why don't you put him in QC area? The outing will be perfect. But it wasn't that. You see, you have to approach from the point of not this is a job description. You have to go through. But what are they liking? What can you do? Because if you do that, as I said, it'll be a win-win situation. So that's what we did over at the cafe. We do something that they love. And the result is the cookies outside there. Please empty your wallet to buy those afterwards, So those are the things that they can do, and they make wonderful cookies. The fact that we did was, we do something that they love. That's all, within their ability. So I think the approach now should be different with them. With us, it's the same thing. We can do on and on, the same formula. But with them, you have to revamp it again. Right? Thank you.
Okay. Just to follow up on that, so you mentioned sort of this youth who had a bad experience at that one company who didn't do an effective talent to role matching. So is this indicative of like corporate attitudes in general, or is it very mixed across the board?
Through my journey with the corporate sector that we went through, it was an eye-opener to them. I guess they have at one point I was telling the one of the CEOs that, you got to approach them as to their ability, rather than you hire, let's say, a foreign staff cleaning the toilet. Why don't you get our boys to do it? Because when you match their likeness to their job, they'll be perfect. When they clean, they're really, really clean. My son cleans the cleanest plate. He loves water, so I get him to wash the dishes. So that's a win-win situation. And when you're telling this, as I said, corporate sectors, private sector, they're the giants. They employ thousands and thousands of people. So this is what I preach to them every time we met. If there's an opportunity, please do it for us. And a good success last Friday. This Friday was yesterday. So on Friday, we managed to get. We have been in collaboration with Citytel Hotel, which they are employing 4 of our boys specifically in the cafe picking up dirty plates. Simple as that. And we have in collaboration soon with Uncle Rogers, Uncle and Auntie. So they hire them. As I said, the formula is get what are their likings and create job based on their liking, not the other way around. So it has been with Citytel, we're going to start this Monday, and soon follow with Uncle Rogers. So basically, the corporate sector should play their part in this, because as I said, Maybank alone in Menara Maybank, they employ 20,000 people over there. So if you can scratch 1%, that'll be most welcome then. Right?
I think even at times when these large companies are doing their sustainability reports and rushing for that, how much do they actually look at this level of inclusion and this element? Taking it back to you, Batma, I know you had some comments, but maybe you could fold into your response. I would really like to know, and this is for all of you at some point, what would sort of safe, substantive, and meaningful inclusion look like across the board for the economy when it comes to people with disabilities?
Could you rephrase?
It's a very big wish list.
Yeah.
It's a huge question, but I suppose I'm asking in essence for your personal wish list.
Personal?
Wish list.
Wishes.
Yes, after so many years in the activism scene and fighting for this, what is the meaningful change you would like to see?
Oh, definitely no discrimination when taking disabled persons to work. Okay, let me just start with, sometimes you notice that when people who are working, persons with disabilities, they work for a while and then suddenly they leave. Nobody knows why. They may have been facing challenges which they cannot live up to, so they leave the job. Why? Because the human resource of that company is not aware of what are the challenges faced by this employee. Now, do they have legal rights? Can they complain to anybody? Yes. They can go to the Labour Department, Jabatan Tenaga Kerja. They can lodge a report if they are being discriminated against, or if they're not being treated fairly, or no proper wages are given to them. But then again, the person will think, if I couldn't report, I would lose my job. So, sometimes it's a vicious cycle. So this is where we have to now teach employers as well as persons with disabilities that they have rights. Yeah, they have their rights. So when talking about rights, okay, the Persons with Disabilities Act 2008 is not the only act that applies to persons with disabilities. all the about 800 acts apply to us as well. You know, employment, health, everything. So many other acts as well. And even though the PWD Act does not have offences and punishment, it is it introduces right. Yeah, because based on the CRPD, Section 27 of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, Work and Employment, that was been taken and applied in the Article 29. Section 29 of the PWD Act, which talks about employment. It says that the government shall produce. They use the word shall. Shall, according to my lawyer friends, they say shall means mandatory. They shall provide. And it also refers to government, private sector, and NGOs. So it is there. But the law, the PWD Act also has not been tested in the court. Nobody has brought it to the court. Okay? I'm saying this first, as an introduction first. Laws are made. I was a former senator. In the Dewan Rakyat and Dewan Negara, we are lawmakers. So the law is passed there. And after the law is passed, who interprets the law? The judges in all the courts. So I will give you a very good example. Although a lot of, above all these 800 laws, the priority, the biggest law, the most important law in the country is the federal constitution. So the federal constitution also provides rights to all of us, whether able-bodied or disabled persons. And the Article 8(1), Article 8 bracket 1 says that all Malaysians are equal under the law and are able to enjoy equal protection of the law. 8(1). Now 8(2) says they should not be discriminated against on the basis of race, religion, they introduced gender, but a lot of the disabled community, disabled organizations are fighting for it to include the word disability. But let me tell you that even though the discrimination not based on disability is not there in 8 bracket 2, in a recent case on the 16th of January of this year, the High Court in Penang gave a decision, a landmark for us. Its history was created in the sense that the lawyer made use of 8(1) of the federal constitution, the highest law in the country, and the judge did take that into account, as well as Section 29 of the PWD Act, and allowed this person, his name is Cheng Bao Zong, he was working as under contract in the year 2020. And when he applied for a permanent post, he got to know that he did not, although he was shortlisted for the interview, he did not get the post. And he was brave enough to take a case against the government. And he won. And although it was at the High Court, the government can still appeal, to the Court of Appeal and definitely Federal Court. They were given 1 month. Thank God, good news. 1 month, the government did not say anything. What does that mean? Yeah, let us use what is available in the Federal Constitution, the highest law, to fight for our rights. Bring it to the court. Even accessible. If you cannot enter a particular building and the person has not followed the uniform building bylaws, take the person to court. Are we willing to? Takut. We are afraid of not having enough money to employ a lawyer. But there is Bantuan Guaman. Bantuan Guaman, the government has asked to set up this fund where those who cannot afford to pay are given a free service, free legal service.
If I can actually just interject from the questions from the floor, someone actually says that they believe that the law is very much skewed in favor of those who have the emotional and financial resources to make these challenges and launch these suits. That's also a inclusivity question in its own. How would that be addressed?
Yeah.
I can understand where Batma is coming from. Like, we need to be able to stand for our rights and be able to push for that. But I'm going to try to phrase this without, I don't want to say, I can't swear, can I? No, I can't swear. I'm going to try to say this without swearing. Why does our right depend on our bravery? Why is it dependent on us being brave? Are we not equal citizens of this country? That is the question. Why does it depend very much on disabled persons having to fight without any support? And this is the question. I mean, yes, the court processes are available, but they are not accessible. For every successful court case that a disabled person brings to court, 100 don't make it past, what's the word? Locus. You need to prove locus. You need to prove that you're directly affected and that you can show measurable harm before the court allows you to take the case further up. And it shouldn't be the fact that you have to be brave and go through the court process to have your rights respected. Yes, I agree that it is an avenue, that it is a perfectly legitimate avenue. There's always litigation, legislation, and demonstration. These three things that you need, that any social movement needs to push for positive social change. Legislation, that means working through with policymakers, lawmakers, pushing through new laws. Litigation, that means taking cases to court. And also demonstration, which doesn't always necessarily mean protest. But there are ways that you can withhold your labor or show protest to your policymakers. These three things do not work in isolation. They have to be done together. So I agree completely that these avenues are legitimate and valid, but not every disabled person can access them. And if I may respond to your question about what do I see as inclusion. Tomorrow PM, holiday, number one. Holiday for everyone. But I mean, I can't really answer that question because I don't know what it looks like. But I would know, I do know what I would like it to be like. It would be an environment, a society where a person in a wheelchair can take public transportation and go to the beach and enjoy themselves and just be a person. Are we heading towards that society? Imagine a disabled person, wheelchair user, having to use public transportation to go to the beach and enjoy themselves. How many barriers are you having to overcome? That is the society that I want to see, where a deaf person can go to the cinema and watch a movie and enjoy the movie on an equal basis with everyone else. Not because, not necessarily because they have special accommodations, but because it's a given. It is their right to participate in society. And the roles that we all must play is actually supporting that right to participate in society. I want to see a world where we have more raised hands in more rooms like this. Very much.
I think between the two of you, you've raised this very strong point and narrative about how, yes, there's such brave and courageous people fighting for this better society. But at the same time, if someone doesn't want to do that, it shouldn't be denied to them. It should still be a right given to them just by the fact that they're a citizen of this country, or that they're a human being, that they're part of the economy. So speaking of that, I would actually really like to know, Mr. Adley, if with the Autism Cafe project, have there been any sort of approaches from corporate sector or the government sector regarding scaling the project up or replication? Since you've already sort of built this model, it's there, it's working.
Yeah, it's working. We are currently being in touch with the Jabatan Kebajikan Masyarakat here. What we wanted to do is, you have the training policies and training activities that you have, but if you went thoroughly through it, it's focused on the high-functioning individuals. Again, I'm looking at from the autism spectrum. Autism is a spectrum. They have varieties. Now, if you look thoroughly, what being provided by the government is actually high-functioning autism. And what about those who are not high-functioning? They're left out. So I think the approach, yeah, you have a good policy and stuff, but the approach has to be intelligent, not focusing on one side where you left the gap open on the other side. That is not right, And the other thing that I would like to highlight is, where did I put it? Yeah. We're talking about employment, getting them to be employed by certain organization, whatever it is, But there's an option to that. Those who can't work, those who can't be in a place where there's so many people like this, we have one individual who freaked out every time there's huge crowd. So again, you need to approach it in a very selective manner. If they can't work, if they can't be employed, let them be self-employed. Provide trainings that is able to meet that. What we did with our boys who can't work, we taught them one skill, one simple skill, making cupcakes. Because I was based in a cafe, making cupcakes, or making cookies, or making soft cookies, all those things. Get them to master one item, and then the organization should be given opportunity to our boys to sell their product. So it doesn't have to be employed, but giving them opportunity, a simple opportunity by giving them what MIM giving to us, one table, doesn't cost you a cent. Just a table, and provide them the opportunity for them to expand. Instead of working, they are being self-employed. As simple as that. So they earn a lot more. They earn a lot more. I can guarantee you that they earn a lot more.
All right, I'm aware of time, so let me just go through maybe 3 or 4 more questions very, very quickly. I'm sorry. Please, cannot lose. So one of these questions is about ableism in the workplace and how it may not be intentional. So what resources are there for workplaces to understand ableism? So I'm going to go out on a limb and say the answer to this is actually there are dozens, hundreds of toolkits out there. There are organizations that are willing to parse you through this foliage and assist you. And what is actually more important is that the workplace has a genuine desire to tackle ableism. Would that be all right? Okay, we've ticked that one off. This is a practical question which actually does sound like someone may need it answered. If you've left a job because the agreed upon accommodation was not upheld, how honest should a disabled person be, and what could be the ramifications? This would require sort of a lived experience answer. So if your employers promised you ABC and then they don't do it, what's the recourse? You've already signed everything, you're already there, and you're struggling.
Like what I said, if the employer promises to do something and they don't do it, you can bring it up. You can complain to the Jabatan Tenaga Kerja. You got to expose. I think we have to be brave. I mean, I don't know whether it's an Asian mentality or Malaysian mentality to, segan, afraid.
It's also tiring, it's just so difficult already in society to operate, and then being asked to do extra labor must be quite challenging in that practice.
Yeah, but they should be taught that they've got rights. Do persons with disabilities have rights? Yes, we have. We are citizens of this country. We pay taxes. And our vote, we also vote to put the candidates into parliament. The 222 parliamentarians, we voted them. So therefore, they must be responsible towards us as well. So therefore, they also must listen to us. And if there is any issue, faced by persons with disabilities, they should bring it up in Dewan Rakyat and also Dewan Negara. Although we've got only one senator, a disabled senator in Dewan Negara, but I noticed that even in Dewan Rakyat, almost every day there's a question about disability.
I also noticed that when it comes to your vote, they make it as easy as possible at the polling station to try and get you to...
I would argue that they should be trying harder.
There should be?
They should be trying harder.
They should be trying harder.
They should be trying harder. I mean,
beyond just voting day.
Yeah, beyond just voting. I mean, one vote every 5 years, and then your life is on autopilot and with no mechanisms to change, shape, or influence policy or legal reform. And my MP, the last time I saw him, was on a poster when I voted for him at the general elections. And so,
I voted in Tambun.
Okay, can I just tambah sikit je? The issue is also, okay, if you're non-disabled, can you influence laws and policies? If you are non-disabled, can you influence laws and policies? Now imagine how much harder it is for a person with disability. That is how much harder it is.
So that actually segues quite nicely into this other question, and I think it's interesting because I've asked you this once before. Sort of what are the pros and cons of registering if you're a low support needs individual, so high functioning? So I do understand there's that solidarity element, which I have discussed before, but I would love to hear your thoughts on this as well. So if you're high functioning, low needs.
Okay, I won't go into those classifications.
Sure.
But generally, from my understanding is, what are the pros and cons of registering for the OKU card? Right? I mean, a lot of people are fond of, so you get some tax write-offs and you get some, which are framed as benefits. But my argument is this, there are no benefits to being disabled in this country. There are no benefits to being disabled, full stop. And the framing of it as benefits is really disingenuous and really, it kind of puts us on a pedestal with unrealistic expectations that, oh, we're being treated so nice, but we have no protection from discrimination. How this narrative doesn't jive. So pros and cons. Pros, yes, you do get some tax write-offs, but my argument is this, how many disabled persons earn enough to pay income tax? I mean, do we have the numbers? We don't. We don't have the numbers because no one collects data on disabled persons. No one collects data on the quality of life of disabled persons. We have data on how many persons have been registered, 700,000 plus, beginning of this year. But we have no data on quality of life. We don't have any data on what kind of discrimination persons face. And the data we do have, we do not make a point to connect it to systemic issues. It's always a disability issue. It's never systemic. Discrimination is disability discrimination. But Malaysia operates on, I would argue, systemic discrimination. It is part and parcel of our governance. Pros, you have access to these things, right? There's a list of 20, 30 odd benefits that you get. So for instance, I have a disabled card, OKU card, I can get tax write-offs for to renew my passport. However, those tax write-offs can only be claimed if I make those application over the counter. So I have to physically present myself to get the tax write-off. And when I present, because I have a OKU mental card, so with a mental psychosocial disability, mental disorder, the immigration officer asked me, can you provide a letter to certify that you're fit to travel? It is ridiculous. And it is ridiculous because these are made on very old, outdated assumptions about disabled persons. These are very old, outdated, because once you have a mental disorder, you're no longer sane, you can no longer make decisions for yourself, and this is very, very problematic. Those are the pros. So you have tax write-offs. And those tax write-offs only apply to certain classes of disabled persons. The solidarity aspect is important because with only 700,000 people registered, the government has excused not to provide more money. You only have 700,000 people. So the number of OKU parking lots are based on how many people are registered as disabled. The amount of resources that is pulled out, that is given to disabled persons in terms of funding is based on the number of 700,000 people. So that's not much. The cons, you are now specifically making yourself a target for discrimination. You are now obliged to reveal that you have an OKU card and can be excluded from a job, from a school, from a university, for any reason, completely arbitrary, with no redress. Unless that redress involves a very long, prolonged legal process, which not everyone can afford. So pros, yeah, you not pay 200 ringgit for your passport when you renew it, but you can't get a job. Me, I mean, I've been doing this for years, and to publicly be talking about my disability status, my mental health struggles, my suicide attempts, with all you people here, some of you working in HR, if you saw my resume cross your desk, would you even give me a second look? Thank you. So this is the issue. So lived experience is important and valuable up to the point where I apply for a job from your company and oh no, he's got issues, mental health issues, he's tried suicide before. So, I mean, pick one. I mean, honestly, just pick one. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to open it for questions from the floor. Cannot kalah. Yes, please. And then this gentleman as well. Great. Just introduce yourself if you'd like, or if you don't want to, that's fine too. And if you are directing it at a specific person, just specify who.
Hello, my name is Philip Wong. I'm a retired HR manager. First, a couple of comments. Number one, why aren't there people bringing microphones to people with disabilities at this function? Very, very ironically, I mean, you're supposed to be disability rights and advocacy, and we have to run to the microphone here to ask a question. I'm not so bad. I'm high functioning, so I can run here sort of. Number two, another comment, but before I come to the question, the JKM in SS15 Subang Jaya is not OKU friendly. So when I went there to apply for my card, I had to climb up a few flights of stairs. Well, not really, about only 5 steps, but even then, if you're on a wheelchair, forget it. So if I remember correctly, there are no ramps anywhere. And this mic is OKU unfriendly. So 2 comments about the fact that we have to run to the mic rather than the mic coming to us. And number 2, JKM office in SS15 is seriously OKU unfriendly. All right? Now my question, what enforcement is there about the 1% who are supposed to be employed? I just quickly glanced through the OKU Act. Thank you very much for telling me there was an OKU Act. I'd never heard of it before. And my rakan at the table, who are also coincidentally from HR, the HR profession, they themselves have never heard of the OKU Act. So when I come to the question about enforcement, what is the government doing to educate employers and the public at large about their rights and their obligations? As far as I know, nothing is being done. We know about constitutional rights. I'm not so sure about the Employment Act, to be honest, because there's a bit about discrimination, but it doesn't state what kind of discrimination. There are lots of weaknesses in legislation here in Malaysia, and certainly when it comes to the 1%, there's no enforcement. So what should be done? Why isn't the government doing something about enforcement? So that's what I have to say.
Would you rather answer now or get everyone's question first?
Yeah, okay. Right. Yeah, the 1% is not law. 1% is policy, right? And of course, the government through Perkeso, through the Human Resource Ministry, through the Welfare Department, JKM, they organize courses, and they invite employers, they invite the private sector to attend. But then again, all that is no outcome. Nobody monitors. There is no monitoring and evaluation whether or not that 1% is achieved. What are the methods used to achieve? So that needs to be drawn up, and we need to have a monitoring and evaluation body to make sure that this 1% is achieved, at least in the next few years. That's one. And also, I would like to thank MIM for inviting us here, because MIM plays an important role in educating and training managers and training people from the private sector, from the government as well. So we hope that, and I noticed that when I went through your website, you have numerous courses, short courses, programs. It will be great if you can have programs to educate employers in employing persons with disabilities. And perhaps you can also get in touch with the various DPOs, NGOs who are working on employment issue to invite us to come and help you out as well. And we could provide the training also. You're also HRD certified trainers, so you can include some of us as part of the trainers as well, to convey and to make sure that we all work together to get that 1%. And please, it's not just limit 1%. Beginning only is 1%, and it has to go on, to offer jobs to all those who are qualified, who have got the capability. And also one more point, we also have to educate persons with disabilities when they go for interviews to project themselves. They don't even talk. They'll say, okay, this is my file. And I expect the person to read. Speak up for yourself. I'm capable of this. I've done that. Just like people in the West, they speak up for themselves. So let the person know that, you are speaking up for yourself. So we have to have both ways, prepare the persons with disabilities as well to fight for their right. Thank you.
Thank you. So just in the interest of time, maybe we can have the next two questions sort of back to back, and then we can answer in your winding up. Keep it about 3 minutes, like 1 minute each, please.
Hi, this is Daniel, 360 All Ability. Oh, sorry. Oh, my mistake. I think me first? Or, yeah, I'll allow the other gentleman first.
Hi, I have a question here. My name is Farid. So I wanted to know what is the meaning of SIUMAN, SIUMAN, this organization. Yes, I have two questions here. That's the first question. The second question is, one is the breaking the barriers. Yeah, it's regarding about breaking the barriers. Usually all those normal people, when they are looking at us, the deaf, they feel so scared to approach us, and always we feel rejected and they don't want to talk to us. And the hearing people, they like to gossip around with all deaf people, a lot of comments on us about our work, and even on the autism members, and also what are the perspectives. And this affected our family as well, that they're starting to have these negative comments about us. And also in the future, I'm looking at it, even the government themselves will find that it's difficult to break these barriers about the work, about the perspective, and also as they are looking these negative things that the people are talking about us, that means it's the gossiping. How is it to be transformed from negative to be positive of their attitude? Is there any opportunities given for all deaf people and all the OKU people? Is it open? Wow, when I was looking at America, the accessibility is all different. It is they don't have such a thing like gossiping and negative attitudes towards the OKU. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Shall I go through all three of you? Okay. Can I get the last two questions and we'll come back and answer all of these at once? Yes. Please, thank you.
Mic check, yeah. Daniel, and this question is for Senator, oh, so sorry, so used to calling you Senator, Ms. Bathma. So I'm not talking about the recourse or anything, but really I want to hear from your experience working with government agencies. What are some reasons, and I use air quotes sometimes, reasons that they say they find it hard to fulfill the 1% policy target, because it's been almost 40 years and it's 0.3%. So if the government can't do that, how do we expect private sector to actually be able to do that? So what are some of the reasons that you have heard over the years from government agencies to say that it's, why it's hard for them to fulfill that 1% quota? Because for me, I am HRDC, I'm going through my accreditation, and if I were to design a program, I need to think of addressing those reasons and those excuses, we could call that sometimes, on why it's hard to employ people with disabilities. So some reasons you've heard over the years from government agencies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, hi, I'm Puan Arlina. My background is from Paralympic Council, Paralympic team swimmer. Okay, 3 children, 1 autism, 2nd blind, and the 3rd one dyslexia, just like me, but I'm on the high function. My husband is Asperger's. Okay, I want to be a citizen that not just complain. I would like to propose to Mr. Hasby Mas Putra and Adli, let's us joint venture to solve this education, because I have been in politics. I don't have to mention which party. It's all the same. 7 years fight for the education for the able body and also for the OKU. Okay, end up I have to do homeschooling for my children because they are not suitable. They don't do profiling. Let's do profiling. So let us, the one who provide the workmanship. We have human resource for the able. Why not for the OKU? Okay, please look into that. Actually, I have more questions, but I don't have the time. We'll speak later. But basically, I already fight for it, Mr. Bhavani. I tried to look for the lawyer to do the pro bono. They said that the issues on the politics, my children get banned when I voice up. They don't like parents like me. They said I'm the, instead of we are the victim, they are playing the victim, manipulative. So we are losing. There's no win-win situation. Thank you. It's a lot more actually. Thank you so much.
Please, of course, feel free to track any of them down afterwards.
If we don't answer, you can just meet us
Just
after
come and
this.
find
Yeah.
them. Yes. Last one, thank you, and then we'll do just a short wind-up where you address these questions. And
All right, Poon from Navitas and Care Meals. Thanks to MIM, I got to know about this whole realm of disability. And I spoke to my partner. We're actually setting up a central kitchen. And one of the reasons we are here is we want to look for employees who are going to work in this central kitchen. And disabled people, whatever it is a much better worker, all right, than any of the normal workers out there. We would, number one reason is because they are very focused, they are very dedicated, and it also gives them a very high self-esteem if they are independent. So that is one of the reasons I'm here, to look for people, and we're going to design our kitchen process to cater to this. So I'm going to talk to some of the panels up there, especially Mr. Adi. I heard you on BFM that day, and that was also the start of that triggered my thinking that this is actually a better workforce than the normal people, the Gen Y, the Gen Z, or whatever Gen, all right, because these people have dedication and passion. Thank you.
thank you so much. If we could just have a few closing remarks where you address, and don't forget to explain what Sioman means, and maybe starting from Ms. Padma, and then we'll work our way down.
Answering the question?
Any questions that you can address, as well as just your wind
About
up.
what Daniel asked about, what the government's excuse for not fulfilling that 1%. They are always giving excuses. They say, oh, the place is not accessible. Surprising. Putrajaya was built 1998 onwards, all the buildings came up after the uniform building bylaws. All of the buildings must be accessible. Definitely, they can take in people on wheelchairs and those with other disabilities as well. Why are they not taking in? Attitudinal barrier. And SPA. When I was senator at that time, I brought a few of the representatives from NGO to meet up with SPA, Suruhanjaya Perkhidmatan Awam, to let them know that that there are people who have come, graduates as well as those who are supportive staff, who can apply and work in the government. So, but you see, the system is like this. The ministry, the SPA will wait for all the different ministries to submit what are the vacancies available the following year. And then whether they can take disabled person or not. They do not fill in that part, whether they can take in a disabled person or not. And everybody thinks only of the Kementerian Wanita, Pembangunan Wanita dan Masyarakat, KPWKM. Why? Because the welfare department is under the KPWKM, and under the welfare department is the Jabatan Pembangunan Orang Kurang Upaya. So everybody thinks it's a function of KPWKM only. No, it's a function of all the ministries. All the other ministries also can offer jobs and take in persons with disabilities. Same goes to state governments as well. All the state excos also have to offer jobs for disabled persons and take in and abide by that 1% government policy. So if they're not taking it, nobody is pushing them. So we need a strong force. From time to time, we not only advocate, but we need to lobby and push the government, federal level and the state level, to fulfill their promises. Right, thanks.
Okay. To answer, what was his name earlier? Farid. Okay. Sioman means, it means not crazy. Yeah, it means sane, basically. I'm using crazy in that, I'm very sorry, but it means sane. We picked that name because it's provocative. It flies in the face of the stereotype that persons with mental disorders are insane. Right? That's one of the reasons why we chose that name. It gets people thinking. Right? I mean, would you listen to a crazy person? Like, I'm here, I've got a mental disorder, and here you are nodding along and clapping. Does that make you also insane? Yeah, and to the question about how do we overcome this, let's call it socialized stigma. These are the norms that we have when we interact with disabled persons. Discomfort because we're not familiar with them, we don't know how to act, and there is a reason why. Because we don't interact with each other. From when we are born, and through schooling system, to employment, all of us are segregated. How are we supposed to know each other if we at no point do our paths cross? You have segregation for special needs students who go to special schools. Deaf students go to completely deaf schools. You don't interact with non-disabled persons. When do we then get to know each other? When do we get to know what's your favorite food? What are our hobbies like? What do you like to do in your spare time? These are the socializations that a lot of non-disabled persons take for granted. You can just pop your head over the fence and ask your neighbor, how are you doing? But if your neighbor is in a wheelchair and they don't really have mobility around the house, how are you going to have that social interaction? When public spaces, when sidewalks, when malls, maybe not all malls, but generally, like Kuala Lumpur, the Greater Klang Valley, when do you see, but the last time you interacted with a disabled person? For today, do you see disabled persons on a daily basis? This is not a problem from in the disabled community itself, because a lot of times, because how society is arranged, getting back to my presentation earlier, because of how society is arranged, we rarely get to talk to each other. We rarely have equitable, symmetrical relationships with other people. The only reason that most of the time in this current paradigm of our civilization is that we generally only meet other people when it's over a monetary transaction. We don't talk to each other about hobbies. We don't hang out with other people just because. We meet other people because we want to either buy or sell something. And the conversations we have are just to fill in the time before we transfer those two things from each other. But we don't make the time, we don't have the opportunity to actually, hey, do you know how to make a kite? Do you know how to cook over an open fire? Do you want to go camping? You have to actively push these things to be able to do them. But they are not part so much of our social fabric anymore. And disabled persons are getting increasingly left behind because of this segregation. It's not, I don't want to say that a lot of it is state sanctioned or pushed or promoted by state power. It's not mandated by any law, but because of how, I'll just use this word, because of how feudalistic our society is, we tend to not hang out with people who are not like us. And that, I think that's a great kerugian. It's a great loss. It's a great loss. Because the diversity, humanity is actually what managed to make us the dominant species on this planet, and we're forgetting all that. Thank you.
I have not much to say here, but when the gentleman mentioned about gossiping and all, I just want to share you the story that what I went through setting up and running the Autism Cafe project. Yeah, it can be hurtful sometimes when you run the project and people see you differently, and accusations, whatnot, came towards us, in a very bad manner. People looking at us using individual with autism as a stepping stone for them. There's so many things that happen along the way. The only thing that you can do to keep your sanity is to forget about it. Make your conscience is clear. You are not answerable to them. They can gossip anytime they want, but just let it be. If you took matters into people gossiping, it'll be stressful. You don't need that. Just focus on what you're doing best, and it's for the good. And also, I would like to stress this. Yeah, policy are meant to do good. They're meant to do good. But it takes quite some time to amend or improvise it. But rather than wait, do your part. I'm doing my part. I don't want to wait next 10 years. Where else I can do something right now? It might take another 10 years to amend the policies. But do whatever you can, whatever you felt it good, whatever you can to amend the situation. As I said, waiting for the policy might take ages. So rather than wait, take action on it.
Thank you so much. Thank you to our panelists and to MIM and CAS for today. And very sorry to the next speaker. I've flown too close to the sun. I think it's remote though, so they can't scold me in person. All right, I'll hand over with that. Thank you so much. Thank you again, guys.
Thank you very much, moderators, panelists. Please remain on stage. I'd like to invite Ms. Miriam Fisher, Country Director of Conrad Annau System, CAS Malaysia, accompanied by Mr. Kabanish Eliatambi, to go up the stage to present to our gifts to our esteemed speakers and moderators. Everyone, please remain stage. Group photo.